Come one, come all, or come with a smile, or don't come at all. This is episode 1 of our podcast that we are calling Games Night, right, Eric?
Games night.
One of them.
Yeah, one of those. We're kind of hammering out the details still.
We are.
Yeah.
And who are you?
I'm Eric. I'm Eric Kane. I am a blogger at Forbes, and I do some YouTube stuff, and I get in fights on Twitter.
Yeah,
that's what I'm best known for. It's my Twitter fighting.
Yeah, your latest one today is your latest Rings of Power stuff, which we can get into later.
Totally. Yep.
Are you winning?
Oh, is there a winning? Is there a win state? And I don't think so. I think we're all just losing.
Even if you win, you actually lose.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
No, there's no winning this one. I mean, people, this comes down to the whole fandom thing. You just, you don't change. Most people don't change their minds.
No.
Not quickly anyways. It's people fight. They want to be people, put a lot of their identity into these things that we consume. And I understand that. Obviously, like we have nerd stuff, and I got a bunch of swords, and you've got all these statues and toys, and like we like our
my
stuff.
Toys, man. I'm coming for you if you do.
And the poster, it's I like, part of my identity is wrapped up in this stuff too. But I find that people are very, I don't know. It's just they're really, really, really wrapped up in liking something, to the point where they will viciously attack you if you don't like it.
It's not even open for a conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
And I get it. I mean, I get it. I don't love it, but I get it. It's just weird.
And I'm Jason Rose.
Yeah.
I don't do much. I mean, I do stuff that isn't involved with video games, but I love talking to. And Eric and I found each other serendipitously, and we've decided to make this venture in podcast, videocast form to talk about our favorite things, which just happen to be video games, which I hope you out there enjoy as well, or else why are you listening to it? Surely isn't because of our faces. So video games, TV, film, and all sorts of nonsense, like my fantasy football team from time to time, which I'm 3-0 on, by the way. You're defending.
Never done fantasy football.
Oh,
I guess I'm just don't follow sports enough. I don't know. You're going to have to lead the charge on that one.
It's a bunch of grown men babies playing fake football and acting like it's awesome all the time. That's all it is. But yeah, this is games night, and we're going to try to hammer out maybe 2 of these a month. Sounds about good. Something like that. Maybe more, maybe less. Special edition episodes when it feels good for us. A little games music, a little, but it's not going to be your typical games podcast per se. We're not going to try to keep up with the Joneses. At least I'm not going to. One, I don't have the time. You can see I have the white beard. I'm old. I have young kids. It's going to be hard for me to pay the latest and greatest. But I do bring a lot to the table in terms of games knowledge, and I am up to date on this stuff. But we're going to talk about games and TV and film at our pace. Make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I don't keep up with stuff nearly enough, but games are time consuming, man. It's not as easy as when we were young.
Being a part of the conversation. I mean, that's all well and good, but for me personally, it's kind of overrated.
Yeah, and it just depends, I suppose. I mean, there'll probably be some things that. There hasn't been a lot of video game news, like newsy big things going on, as far as I can tell. But there will be times probably when we want to touch on the latest subject or the biggest, a big game release.
Well, I think one of the things we're going to get into today, not to, spoil the lead, but God of War Ragnarok. I think we're going to have a lengthy conversation about that, a franchise that I think we both hold near and dear. At least I do.
Yeah. I especially liked the, we'll get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, just trying to, it's always hard to like introduce your what you're doing. I mean, I guess you're just going to have to get a feel of it as we go, because we actually don't really know. I mean, we know what we want to talk about, but the conversation ebbs and flows and takes us where it's going to, as the minutes and hours and episodes peel by. These are the days of our lives.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk about TV and movies and all the nerdy stuff like that too. Especially because I know my focus has moved a lot, more into that realm as my career has taken shape. But yeah, games and the things like that gamers enjoy. Yeah, I don't know. We'll
Yeah, it's
see.
funny because, I thought about the title. Game night used to mean like board games and stuff like that. It still
Yeah,
does. But I think
yeah.
today, people probably think of game night as, we're going to get together with some buddies or some,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Play some Mario
buddies
Kart.
means women too out there, just not boys.
I don't
But,
know. I think we should do gatekeeping stuff and keep the women out
no.
of our games.
Yeah.
No women allowed.
No
You know what's funny
women.
about that whole like controversy around like gamers don't want women involved in games? It's like actually like from the time we were boys, we always wished girls would play games with
That's
us
all we
more.
ever wanted.
Like,
That
please
is
play
such a
games with us.
nonsensical statement. Yeah.
It's so
like,
silly because like that was our great hope, and it never materialized as much as we wanted it to.
like it's nonsense. We absolutely want girls to play games with us. I
Yeah.
wish my wife would play video games with me. She
The
just makes
only
fun
girl,
of me.
really the only girl I've been able to convince to play games with me on a regular basis is my daughter, and that's it. Like
Your
none of my
daughter's
girlfriends. Yeah, no, she's actually she started playing Call of Duty with me a year and a half ago, ish. I can't really say for sure, and she's gotten really good and loves it. And I'm trying to get her to play more games, but that's like her thing. She likes to just get in there and be competitive and blow off steam by shooting people, and I get it. But yeah, it's more girls. We want more girls in this medium, not less.
That's right.
Not fewer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And if you are a girl out there listening, thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. But go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say something stupid probably. Stop me.
But yeah, that's about it. I mean, we'll expound as we go, but every once we'll talk about games critically. We'll cover some news, but it's never going to be all of it. We're not like this all-encompassing podcast that's going to keep you up to date. There's people out there that do stuff like that, and they do it far better. And you can read Eric's stuff at Forbes if you'd like to keep up with everything in terms of games and television and the intersection of politics and culture, all that exciting stuff.
Yeah. I haven't done a lot of political stuff lately. Well, I guess this Rings of Power stuff has gotten a little political, but
well, why don't we get into that? I mean,
news, honestly. I'm just waiting for the nuclear bombs to drop at this point.
Oh shit! I know.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
But yeah,
don't.
We can avoid that subject.
Speaking of that, do you have any tattoos, by the way?
I don't.
None.
None.
I have one, but I want to get a bunch of others. One of those tattoos, there's a Smith song. I can't think of the name of the song, but one of the lines, if it's not love, then it's the bombs that will bring us together. And I like that line.
Great line.
I mean, it's quite true.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to get that inscribed right under my right titty. That'd be fantastic.
Nice. In Elvish.
In Elvish.
Is there an Elvish word for bombs?
I don't know. Nunoroften or something. So, yeah, let's talk about we'll always start, what we're playing, what we're watching, and things like that. I'll let you lead the charge.
Yeah. Well, I'm watching primarily right now Rings of Power and House of the Dragon. Those are the two big shows that I'm following. Andor, which I thought so far I'm a little behind, but it's really good. So that's the new Disney Star Wars live action show that deals with Cassian Andor. Rings of Power is the big Amazon show. Lord of the Rings Second Age monstrosity, and House of the Dragon is the new Game of Thrones spinoff. So those are what I'm watching primarily right now. And then playing wise, I haven't been playing a lot of new stuff. Probably the most up to date sort of game I've played recently was the Modern Warfare 2 beta, which was across 2 weekends. So like Call of Duty every year is one of the biggest selling games, if not the biggest selling game. So that's when that's a game I write about a lot and play a lot. And so Modern Warfare 2 beta was probably the most relevant thing I've played recently.
Very nice. So we can have a conversation about House of the Dragon, but I am not watching Rings of Power. You got to catch me up without spoiling it, a little bit here.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it
Uh,
started off good and then not so
well,
good, and now it is not good at all.
yeah, I mean it's to each their own, of course. Like some people thought it started off terribly and were like, why do you like the show? And at first I really liked it. But yeah, I think it's an interesting project because they're taking the appendices of the Lord of the Rings and they're trying to make a story about the forging of the rings of power, right? The one ring, the 3 elven rings, the 7 dwarven rings, and the 9 human rings. But they've condensed sort of the entire Second Age into one storyline. So, that's like 3,000 years of Tolkien's sort of vague lore condensed into one story that takes place over just, with everyone, the characters that were around at the very end of that age as the events of, thousands of years earlier are happening at the same time. So it's a little bit clunky how they've gone about trying to adapt this, but it's hard to even really summarize without spoiling.
So is it like a cross section of the Silmarillion?
No, the Silmarillion they don't have the rights to.
Okay.
So they can sort of make some references to the Silmarils and whatnot, but they don't have the rights to that story. So they are just making up stuff, basically.
Okay.
They're just
so
making
this is
stuff
just
up. Yeah.
It's Lucy taking some of the stuff that was there and then they're just filling in the blanks, sort of like Game of Thrones last couple seasons.
Yeah, much, much, much more egregiously than Game of Thrones last couple seasons.
Wow.
Because they're just, the last couple seasons at least were still following what was their understanding of the story's arc, right?
Yeah, they just
like they bungled it.
Yeah.
But they're still following what they believed was the story of, that Martin was telling. And they had the misfortune of like relying on his work right up until he stopped writing, and publishing it. So I gotta give them a little bit of a get out of jail free card on that one, because what do you do? Like suddenly the source material runs out. You've been basing every season off of that, and now you just have the outline. So that's kind of a shitty situation to be in. With Rings of Power, they're just using appendices, so they're creating the narrative entirely out of nothing. They're using some of the characters. There's Galadriel and Elrond and Durin and different Tolkien characters, but the story itself is almost entirely just taking these different characters from different eras in the Second Age and jamming them together in one story. So you've got, in Numenor you have Elendil and Isildur, and they're alive at the same time, and Sauron hasn't come back yet, even though in the actual source material Sauron comes back 2,000 years before Elendil is born. So
was Morgoth in it?
Morgoth is gone, but they reference him a lot.
Okay.
So because Morgoth was defeated at the end of the First Age.
Okay.
And then Sauron went into hiding and didn't emerge for 1,000 more years. But right now, yeah.
Is it like well written at all?
No, some of it. It just depends. Like there's some storylines in there that I like more than others, and there's moments where it's genuinely decent. But a lot of it just feels like they don't really know what they're doing. Dialogue can be quite cringy. The story feels really slow, but also really rushed in a weird way. And it just sort of feels like they're trying really hard to emulate Peter Jackson's, Lord of the Rings trilogy, but they don't really understand what Tolkien was getting at with his stories. Galadriel in plate armor on a horse dodging arrows in a battle against orcs is just not what I'm here for. Like I don't need to see that cartoonish, some of the worst parts of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the movies, was like Legolas sliding down the Oliphant, Oliphant surfing or whatever, that goofy stuff. And it's like they're leaning into that.
A little bit of it, but when you take it and you keep, because once you do it once or twice, you gotta like up the ante again and again and again, right? And I understand what you're saying. Like I have seen, like just from the still images I've seen, I actually think she looked good in the stills, but obviously that means nothing in terms of the collection.
She's fine. she's written poorly. That's the main problem
Yeah,
with
like, and
Galadriel.
with yeah, and I heard the story about how they Peter Jackson offered his service, or they contacted Peter Jackson
Mm-hmm.
to advise, and then he followed up and they never got in touch with him. Is that true?
That's what he says. Yes.
Yeah.
He, I don't know what the reasoning was. I don't think we've ever really figured that out. I think that probably, most likely, there's contractual issues at play there, right? Warner Brothers owned the rights to the Lord of the Rings when those movies were made, and he was attached to that Warner Brothers project, and there might be some issues bringing in Jackson into an Amazon produced Lord of the Rings show. I don't know. There's probably
Yeah.
something going on there. But they also might just want to, might
Make it
want
their
it
own.
to have their own vision, their own creation, and I get that. What I wish they had done though is, well, people, some people are very upset about the lore changes, and it's less about the lore changes for me. It's more about how they affect the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you condense all these timelines and you try to build a story around that, you have to be a pretty good, wordsmith. You've got to be able to structure that narrative in a way that's compelling and engrossing, and have, with characters that you care about. And it must not be easy, but they just have, I think they've relied too much on making these sort of grand looking sets and these sort of epic feel, but they don't have much of a story there. And
Does it?
it's
I
kind,
know this is
they're
it's the most expensive show ever made. Supposedly, does it feel that
yeah.
way?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean,
Mm.
I really felt like it did in the first couple episodes, and I think in terms of when they're showing big mountain ranges with waterfalls pouring off them, and there's Bear McCreary's score playing out over that, and he's a phenomenal composer. Did he do God of War?
Yeah,
He did, right?
he did.
He's done a bunch of stuff, all kinds of
I
different
don't know
video
if he's
games.
doing the sequel, but he definitely did 2018's.
Let me look it up real quick.
There we go. But I want to. I will get
it's
into
Bear
the
McCreary.
show. I'll get into the show.
You should watch it. It's definitely worth, I think, for if you have any love of Tolkien, to
For
even
sure.
if you end up not liking it, I think it's still worth. I mean, there are some things that I genuinely still do like and look forward to each week. It's just that the things that bother me.
How many episodes is this season?
8.
So you only have 2
They're
more?
all about an hour. Yep.
So 2 more. And
Yeah,
is
2
there
more.
already a second season coming?
I think they've pre-renewed it for 5 seasons.
Oh, okay. All right. So
they've committed bigly to this. Yeah.
Bigly.
For better or worse. Yeah. Bigly.
All right. Well,
One of my
I'll
favorite
jump
Trump
in.
words.
Next time we talk, I'll definitely have a couple under my belt and we can talk about it, because I've been enjoying your writing and your quote unquote conversations with the fans that peruse your writing, which is
people are
always
so mad at
interesting.
me. It's always amusing to me when people are calling for me to lose my job because I'd have an opinion about a show that they disagree with. It's like, you want me to lose my livelihood and my ability to feed my children because I wrote something about a TV show that you don't like? What?
To be fair, they're right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
No, it's crazy, man.
It's crazy.
Listen, we both know this. No one wants to, thou shalt not trespass on the thing I love. They can't even have it being challenged or have a conversation of it. It's there's people out there that think She-Hulk is the best thing going, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Have you watched any of that?
I tried to watch 2 of them, and I was just I can't do this. I just don't. I've tried to watch the last couple MCU shows. I just don't like. Miss Marvel, I wasn't in, although I hear it gets good. So it's just, I don't know. It's not really my demographic, man.
Right. It's too much also. Even the stuff directed at our demographic is too much. You know what I mean? I just have given up trying to keep up. The same thing happened to me with the CWDC shows. Even aside from them being terrible, they like Arrow and The Flash both started out pretty good, I think. But then, aside from them going downhill pretty fast, they also just had so many episodes and so many crossovers, and there was 5-6 different shows to keep up with, and it's like, can't do it. Like, it would have to be so good for me to want it. And with the MCU stuff, it's the same way. It's like, well, Hawkeye was fine. I enjoyed it, but like
Mhm.
Winter Soldier,
Falcon and the
Falcon and the
Winter
Winter
Soldier.
Soldier, I thought was pretty bad. And
I didn't
I
think
never
it
even
was
finished
great.
Loki, which I should probably
I
finish
really
Loki, but
liked Loki,
I
and
just
it's
need
funny
yeah,
because
it was just too
Loki
much.
isn't. He's not even one of my favorite characters, but I actually
Yeah,
thought the show was excellent. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I mean, to me, the biggest problem was that they made the Winter Soldier just look like a wimp half the time. He got his ass
yeah,
kicked by these new super soldiers, and I'm like, okay, this guy's like a trained kill. See, stuff like
right.
that matters to me, Eric. Like
Oh yeah,
power level
me
shit,
too.
like that stuff bothers me. I'm like, okay, you have this super soldier who is well trained. He's been alive forever. All of a sudden, this little girl who just newly got these super soldier serum,
Yeah,
now she's kicking his ass.
yeah.
And then
Well, at
and then
least
at the
like
end of the show, he just kicks her ass anyway. So I'm like, okay,
right.
how did this work? Like, I don't.
There was a lot of problems with that show, and that was definitely one of them. Also, like, what was the point of the bad guys?
No,
Like,
I don't really get it.
they were mad that people were being, like, the people that came back after the snap were getting their shit back. Like that like they set it up so poorly. Like
Yeah, I agree.
the motivations of the bad guys was, and they could have, there was some stuff was good. I liked
Yeah, I like the
I like
transition of Falcon and all that
yeah,
stuff,
and
but
the guy that plays the new Captain America, Kurt Russell's son, he was great.
U.S. agent is that his name?
Well, I think that's what he's going to
That's what he's
be
now
going
become. Yeah,
forward. Yeah. Um,
I like
I
that.
can't think of his name. Something Russell, obviously, but I can't think of
Okay,
it. He was
but I
great.
like
He
that
was great.
storyline.
Yeah, and I like. See, I also just don't love Anthony Mackie. I just
See,
have never really loved him in any. Like, I didn't like him in Altered Carbon. I don't really love him as Falcon. Like,
is it bad
I
to
don't
say that I
know.
actually see him as kind of a B tier actor?
No, it's not bad. I just don't think he's very
That's
good. Like,
like for him to carry a show or a film, I
yeah,
just don't
he's
see it.
just not. He's not there. He's a
I don't think
more of a support character,
he
more of
was
a support
great
actor.
in Captain America Winter Soldier because he's a secondary
Uh
character. He
huh.
comes on, he's filling that gap. He works.
Yep.
In the Avengers, he works as a guy that doesn't have to have a ton of screen time, but when he shows up, it works. And even his camaraderie with the Winter Soldier worked. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as that show, it didn't work. WandaVision, I actually thought was really good.
I loved
And
WandaVision, except for the very end. But I can forgive it for that. I just
yeah,
thought
I
it kind
thought
of
that
got a
was a great
little.
show. And
It
Hawkeye
was so
surprised me
good.
because I don't think Hawkeye is a good. I like. Does anyone
Yeah,
really care about Hawkeye in the
he shoots
Avengers?
a
I
bow
know
and
people
arrow. It's
said they
absurd.
do. Yeah, but like the show kind of worked. I
Well,
didn't mind it.
Jeremy Renner is a pretty good actor, and so that helps. And the chick they got to play, what's her face, Kate Bishop.
Yeah, Kate Bishop.
She was quite charming, I thought, and I liked
Well,
her.
she's
And
she's
that helped.
popular. She's
Yeah.
popular. Like she's in other things. The kiddies
Okay.
like her.
Yeah, I
She
liked her.
definitely has it.
They had the what's his face that plays Lalo in Better Call Saul. He was in there. I like him.
Okay.
Tony Dalton, I think is his name. It's hard to remember all these names. He was like the foreigner that was dating the mom.
Yes. Well, that was That was kind of a funny thing. Yeah.
That's a good little bit of misdirection. Like we thought he was
Yeah.
a bad guy, and then he ended up being like just actually a nice guy. And I loved the LARPing. That was funny as shit, honestly.
That was funny.
I really
And
liked that.
a little Florence Pugh doesn't hurt either.
Oh no, never does. Although her character hurts a lot of people. She's pretty badass, actually. I didn't like Black Widow though. The movie, I thought it was pretty and it was poorly timed in terms of release. It's like, why did you release this
awful.
now?
The timing was awful.
Yeah, like it just seems so disrespectful to that character also to kill her off literally from the whole show, the whole MCU, and then release her movie. It's like, guys, could you have done that maybe before Captain Marvel or something? I don't know.
And it's not like people like Black Widow and people love Scarlet. I mean, she carries films. Like
awesome.
It didn't make sense why she didn't have her own film. It didn't make any sense.
Especially given like the unevenness. There's a lot of like male-led superhero movies.
Exactly.
They had a perfectly serviceable, awesome female character in Black Widow, but she didn't even get a movie before Captain Marvel.
Her film should have came out right after Winter Soldier. She was awesome in Winter Soldier. She's basically the co-star.
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
And that film should have come out right after.
I loved
Man,
Winter Soldier. That was a
fire
great movie.
Kevin Feige. Just hire me, get me in there. Phase 4 wouldn't have been dog shit like it is right now. I would have made
It's
it
pretty
way better.
uneven, isn't it? It's pretty uneven. I like
Even the good, even the
mhm.
good quote unquote Phase 4 stuff just isn't that good.
I will say I really did like the new Spider-Man movie though. I saw it twice, and that
I liked
says a
it,
lot for me.
Eric. But
I
there's
know
some things about
I
it.
just really enjoyed it. I think I liked the other Spider-Man coming back.
Oh, how could you not?
That was so much fun. And honestly, I didn't even like the Andrew Garfield movies to the point where I didn't even finish watching them, but I just loved him in there. He was adorable.
They're terrible films, but
yeah,
he's awesome.
Great.
He's
yeah.
You know what he is? I loved Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man growing up. He is the perfect casting for Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man.
Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man. I don't know that I ever read Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man.
You know his art style, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have Spawn. Like I've got
Spawn
comics.
This is before he went to do Spawn.
Okay.
So he did he started a brand new Spider-Man. I have the gold foil and the silver foil mounted somewhere. Nice. I have like 1,000 comic books. I haven't read comic books in decades, but I just have them all boarded and stored. But I have these. He did 30 episodes, I would say, or 30 issues, I should say, of a Spider-Man run before what is the artist's name? Eric Larson.
That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he took over that Spider-Man run, and then right after that he went and started Spawn.
Okay.
But anyway,
I was getting Spawn when it was coming out. I remember that.
If you look at his version of Peter Parker, it's perfect Andrew Garfield. And I'm surprised no one ever really caught up on that. And he looked great, and like his suit in Amazing Spider-Man 2 is in my opinion was the best suit.
I didn't
but his films are terrible.
Honestly, the first movie I was laughing through it. I thought it was pathetic.
It was so
I don't
bad.
even remember. I mean, I turned it off pretty. I was just watching it on TV, and I turned it off. I was like, "Wow!" Mm-hmm. I never saw the third Tobey Maguire Spider-Man either. Back in the day when when those were coming out, and I wasn't reviewing stuff. If I was done with a series, or I was done with it. I wasn't even going to bother anymore. I just didn't care enough. I didn't care enough because if they were going to do it poorly, then I didn't want to waste my time or feel bad watching stuff that I'm supposed to love, like that's, I can't, honestly, I think,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, finish your thought. Cause I was going to go somewhere different.
I was going to say, I think overall I have to hand it to Disney and Marvel. The MCU on net has been pretty good.
I agree.
But even being pretty good, it gets exhausting. I was just kind of going back to that idea of like there's too much. I think you can't watch everything. Like I watched 4 episodes of She-Hulk. And by the end of it, I was like, well, there's some charming elements, but I don't care. I don't care enough about this character, about the way they're portrayed. Some of the stupid shit they put in there. I watched the first episode of Miss Marvel and I thought it was actually pretty good. But then I was like, talking to my kids, I like, do you want to watch Miss Marvel with me? And neither one of them had any interest, so we never watched it. And I was like, well, if they don't want to watch it, life's too short. I'm not gonna watch it either, And having to watch, going through Obi-Wan Kenobi, what a dog shit show that was, and like.
So I gotta watch that. I haven't watched it. Is it that bad?
It's so bad. The finale was all right. I don't know. It was. I really just. It's crazy to me because Andor had just has just come out, and it's. Production quality is just in terms of production quality, it's light years ahead of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm like, what were they thinking?
Obi-Wan is the show. That's the show that everyone wanted to.
Right. It could have been great. I mean, they had freaking Ewan McGregor to do a Disney Plus live action series with, and they just pissed it away. I won't spoil it for you, but it's quite bad. It's quite bad.
I'll watch it.
It's much worse than I could have ever imagined it would be.
I'm trying to keep up. Like, it's hard for me to keep on my shows. Oh my god! Like, I'm watching the latest season of Cobra Kai because I'm such a Karate Kid degenerate fan from back in the day. And I'm honestly at this point, I'm embarrassed to watch the show.
It's super cheesy, but it's been cheesy for so long that I just kind of roll with it.
It's been 3 seasons of it now, but
I
will say, like,
cheesy.
Since the show was bought by Netflix and Netflix directions changed to focus more on the kids,
Mm-hmm.
it's a far worse show. And it's
Totally.
just like, it was never, listen, it wasn't a well-written show, but what
But
did
it
we
was
show up for?
funny.
I showed up to watch the conflict between Johnny and Daniel and that
Mm-hmm.
awesome stuff. Like, season 1 was great. Season 2 I thought
Absolutely.
was really good too.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, every time the kids talk, all their storylines, honestly, I just hit fast forward now. I
Yeah, they're
just
pretty bad.
I think they're
I
so
like
bad.
even the kids I don't love their stories. That's very true. Although I
No,
will
I
say
think they've
all of their
ruined them
hair has
all.
gotten better. Like this season, their hair is definitely improved over the last couple seasons. But other than that, yeah, they're just like I liked what's his name? What's the main kid? Miguel.
Miguel, yeah.
Miguel in season 1 was great because and
Awesome.
having that
It was
like the
great.
relationship stuff between Johnny and Miguel, and then Johnny and his son, and like that all works really well, I think. But for 3 seasons they've been just spinning their wheels with this stupid like karate rivalry, like that's taken over the whole city.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
if you put like
now
if I
Daniel
was a
doesn't,
parent, they would not be in karate anymore. Like no,
like, I get it. We
nobody's.
gotta stretch the imagination to make it
Yeah.
more of a focus. But Daniel doesn't even work anymore. I'll tell you what my biggest problem is, Eric. I think the show, quote unquote, main character is supposed to even, it's Daniel, yes, but Cobra Kai was meant to be from Johnny's perspective,
Oh, that's the
correct?
main character. 100%. Johnny
Okay. Well, for
Lawrence.
a guy that's the main character, he literally has grown almost not at all.
Right.
He is,
They barely
in terms
focus
of
on him
like
anymore.
actual karate, he learns nothing. He
Right.
gets his ass kicked all the time. How does a guy, like, he's just the same, he doesn't know anything. He's just a fucking moron.
Honestly,
Sideshow.
I will just say that I'm okay with him not growing much as a person because that's kind of his shtick, right? Like here he is when we get to season 1. Here's this guy who's been around for decades. What is he, like 50-ish?
Yeah, he's got to be close to
But
it. Yeah.
doesn't know how to use the internet, right? He hasn't left the 80s, in terms of his music, in terms of his,
Mhm.
his attitude. And I'm okay with a character who doesn't have a huge arc. Like I want him to still. The problem is that he's become a sideshow. I think
That's what
like
I mean.
he's a
That's what I mean.
sideshow now. Like we spend so much time with like the LaRusso kids and like what's her face? The troubled girl,
Tori.
Tori. And it's just like, come on, guys, I don't care.
Well, they have
like,
far more character development than he
yeah,
does. And it's like, the best they could do in this season was get his girl, Miguel's mom, pregnant. That's his
yeah.
character growth. That's
And
like
it's
such
like,
soap opera.
why do we want this? He was a terrible father from the
And
beginning.
it just
Like he should
bothers me.
not
Like,
be having a kid.
I don't want to rob Johnny Lawrence. Like, listen, guys, we'll get going here too. I don't want to rob Johnny Lawrence of who Johnny Lawrence is. But I just like, he's just kind of the same guy from season 1 to season 6. I'm just like, all these guys do different things. They learn new things. And it's like, he's like the best. At least when Johnny got together with some of the old Cobra Kai crew in a couple seasons ago, that showed a little bit more. But ultimately, he's just the same guy. And I'm just like, oh man, like the show just became something else.
Yeah,
Entirely in terms of
well, I
what
think
I
that
loved about
maybe
the first couple seasons.
the other big mistake, honestly, was bringing in. I mean, it was a mixed bag, but bringing in Kreese and bringing in like all these other villains from the original movies, like the focus changed from being like sort of a buddy rivalry show between LaRusso and Lawrence, and became just a completely different kind of story,
Yeah.
and it became, and Kreese is such a cartoon villain,
Of course.
like, and that's fine, but it's like whole seasons built around, it just gets old, and it
With
seems like
generic,
here we,
it's right.
yeah,
Like, he has so much screen time. Every time he shows up, he just spews generic platitudes. I'm like, oh, come on. And I
yeah,
actually
it's
like
ridiculous.
Kreese. Like,
Yeah,
and even Kreese
it's too
has
much
had
Kreese.
more character. He's
Yeah.
had way more character development than
This is
Johnny.
true.
Anyway,
This is true.
this
Yeah,
fucking show. Like,
this is
I'm
true.
struggling. It's funny because when that show, every new season came out, I would just pound them out in like 2 days. I loved it that much. This season, I can't bring myself. I'm just like, like I'm
Dude,
on
when it
episode
first
8.
started, it was so great. I
Oh,
remember
I
first
watched the
watching.
first.
I was
Oh,
late to it, but when I finally I was like I'd heard about it and I was like, okay, I'll have to watch that. I watched the first episode and he's when he's what is he hanging the TV for that lady and he's like, well, you don't have to be a bitch about it. I
yeah.
was like, and he's like, I didn't call her a bitch. I said she was being a bitch, and I was like, wow, this is great. This
Oh,
is
it's
good
great.
writing.
You
Like
know,
it's
he's just
very funny.
crushing beers,
Yeah,
fighting teenagers at the like the Special K or whatever. Oh
yeah.
man, it's so
His
good.
sort of like dunce, like he's like well-meaning, but kind of just such a great. He's a great character because he's not a bad guy,
No, he's
but he's
not.
totally
He's just a
oblivious
fuck
to
up.
like etiquette and all these sort of cultural norms that have kind of cropped up and like that you would expect in polite society, and it's sort of endearing and hilarious. And it was also kind of a nice breath of fresh air because it was poking a little fun at political correctness
Mm-hmm.
in a gentle and affectionate way rather than like feeling political. That's a hard tightrope to walk, to be able to kind of poke fun at the culture without saying too much. And I thought it did that really well. And it's kind of the show's kind of just left all that behind now. It's a soap opera. That's exactly what it
It
is.
is.
It's a
And
soap opera.
we'll get back to I watched this and my wife is like, I can't believe you watched this show with like these teenagers. Like, what are they doing? You're watching and
Uh-huh.
you're like, you know what? I can't watch this right now. But anyway, I
But I
will
can't
finish
stop.
it, but I'm not loving it. I'll tell you that. If they bring back Hilary Swank, which they probably will, honestly, I might not even watch.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot she was in those.
Yes. Yes, she was.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, they'll be bringing in Jaden Smith
Oh God.
from the Karate Kid remake. Oh man.
They should bring his
But
dad
anyway,
in. He's good at slapping people.
oh my god, that's awesome. That is too. Real quick, let's go over House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. What
like
do you
it?
think of it so far? Oh, I really do. I
I
really
like
do.
it. I'm yet to love it, but that's only because I'm comparing it to Game of Thrones.
That's the hard
And
part. Yep.
for me, it feels like mid-season's Game of Thrones. I've yet to like absolutely fall in love with any of the characters. I was getting there with the before the time skip. Young Rhaenyra, young Alicent. I thought they were good. The king is endearing in his sort of ineptitude,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the one constant that's carried through. But it's like, you have the time skip that just happened. We're one episode into it, and it's like you're almost sort of starting over. Even though these are the same characters, yes, you're kind of starting over with them. Except for, I wrote this before, but except for Kristen Cole, who literally looks like the same guy
They
15
should
years
have
later.
graded him a little, I
They didn't
think.
age him whatsoever. He's the same
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Well, and they didn't age Damon really.
No, not really.
And you know what? Like at a certain level, I'm okay. Just sort of, they were already older actors, so whatever. I
Yeah,
don't care
like
that much about that.
it's not crushing me. Don't get me
I,
wrong, but it's just like you noticed it.
yeah, I think it's interesting that the time jump is hard. It's jarring. I really like uh, Emma Darcy, who plays the older
The
Rhaenyra. I
older
think she does a
Rhaenyra, yeah.
phenomenal job as older Rhaenyra. And I also think that, like, since I've watched it all twice now, all the 6 episodes that are out, I've watched twice. I think like the second time through, with it being less jarring, helped me enjoy it more.
Okay.
But like realistically, these are the real actors. Those other actors were just
The
the
introduction.
appetizer, because the show will follow these actors for a much longer, presumably a longer span of time. And this is, what's interesting about this show is that it spans decades, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very different in terms of structure than Game of Thrones, which just spanned a couple of years. This is spanning, this is like reading a history book, like Fire and Blood is the history of the Targaryens, right? This is like reading about a dynasty that's in a tumultuous, 2 or 3 decade, because all these kids that were introduced in episode 6, they're all going to age up too.
Yeah.
And there are new actors for all of them, planned. So
I do think the casting for the two main, what we know now have right now as the main characters, Rhaenyra and Alicent. I think the time jump, they did a great job with the casting choices, like you said,
mhm.
Darcy and the other girl. but they look the same. Like they look
Olivia
like the
Cook.
same.
Yeah.
Olivia Cook. That's right.
Yeah. And they
But I'm liking
replaced
the
Millie
show.
Alcock and Emily Carey. Boy, I remember a lot of names. It's crazy.
I'm like that too. I'm off on these ones, but I will say
I've written them so many times, but
I'm ready. I am ready to
Yeah.
love the show. So that just means I'm into it. I'm into it
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that this has been it's a lot of setup. There's been 5-6 episodes now of just setting up what's coming. And that's odd for a show, right? Like we're not used to seeing so much setup, but what's coming is the question of the succession, right? Like what happens when Viserys dies, and who's going to inherit the throne? Will it be Rhaenyra or will it be Aegon? And that once that kicks off and we get the war and we get the violence and we get all the conflict between Rhaenyra and Daemon, and then the Hightower side, the Aegon and Alicent. I think that's going to be freaking crazy.
And
that's going to be crazy. There's going to be some crazy shit that goes down.
Like it'll feel earned because some shows can't get away with that level, that pace of show, that level of setting up. But the truth is, if you can just get people through that and their interest, which we are, because you ultimately have dragons to string you along the way. When
that's true.
That's getting a little slow.
Vicious murders.
And you're like, shit.
And some pretty cool dragons too, for sure.
Oh yeah, I like how they went different with the designs, for sure.
Yeah.
Like the last one in the last episode where they kill it's her dragon, whatever her name is. Yeah. So
Lena has her dragon Vhagar kill her, but that's one of the original Targaryen dragons, right? That's when
right.
Aegon and his sister wives conquered the Seven Kingdoms. That was what.
Which one wrote him
right now? It was the older sister that wrote on Vhagar. So, and then there was the younger sister's dragon was killed during the wars, and then so it's the only surviving dragon now of that time of the original.
Aegon rode Balerion, right?
Yep, and he's now a skull in the Red Keep.
The Black Dread.
Yeah, the Black Dread. I can't think of what Rain was it. God, there's these names. These Targaryen names really fuck me up, right? It's like, it's all these V names and like RH
Rhaegar,
names.
Yeah.
It's like
A's,
Rhaenys, Rhaenyra. Yeah. It's like, God, you guys have annoying naming conventions. They're great names, but
do you watch them? Do you get early access? Or do you watch them on TV like the rest of us peasants?
No, I am not a peasant for this show. I actually have screener access for both this show and Rings of Power, which makes my life a little bit easier. But
that's awesome.
I got 6 episodes all at once for House of the Dragon. So I watched all 6 in like 2 days, and I will say I don't think it's a binging show. I think I like it more watching it now, rewatching them, because now I rewatch each one each week. I like them more spread out because it's sort of an unpleasant show.
It can be,
you know what I mean? It's very dark. Yeah. There's incest and murder, and knights gouging each other's eyes out and
coming the way they should, and
2 miscarriages that are it's very dark. It's very grim, and it doesn't have Arya Stark or Tyrion Lannister or any of these characters that are sort of endearing and fun.
Yeah,
and that makes it harder to. So what I would say is that I've grown to appreciate this show's complexity and its patience and its weird pacing. Like, it's a very unique and very different show, but it's much less likable, and its characters are much less likable than a lot of the characters in Game of Thrones, and that makes it a little harder to connect with, which I think you were getting at a minute ago.
Because in a modern era where so many TV shows are trying to be everything for everybody, I'd rather a show just be, you know what, we are what we are. If you don't want to watch it, we're okay with that.
Yeah,
but it also comes. You gotta be confident in your show and have a lot of money behind you. So, but the license and the franchise earned it. So we're in. I'm in with that show. But anyway, games.
At least it's very true. Oh yeah, games. Can we take a 2-minute break?
We can,
and we can maybe edit it out in post.
Yes, I will edit it out.
You seem like a calm and reasonable person. Are you a calm and reasonable person?
And we're back.
We're back.
There we go.
Yes, after our commercial break.
And
that was the word from our sponsors. That's where we get the big bucks.
100%. And I guess we can get into some games now.
Yeah, video games. What?
And you've been playing Call of Duty.
I have been. Yeah,
Which
I had a
is
thought before we.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I had a thought and an idea, and I wanted to say it before I forget. We could do something with this podcast where, like, we pick a game that we both want to try out and play it, and then come back the next episode and talk about it.
I like that.
You know, it wouldn't have to. We wouldn't have to play the whole game. Like,
no, just try it out, like a recommendation.
You know, like, yeah, we're gonna play. You know, Return to Monkey Island, or like one of these. You know, some game, some little indie game, or maybe some big game that's just releasing, and we're gonna play a couple hours of it, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about it. You know, maybe people that are followers, you know, who's listening, subscribing, they could theoretically also play the game, like a book club kind of, and then, you know, or whatever. They wouldn't have to, but that would be an idea that they could, or they would maybe listen to us and decide to go play it. Whatever, just like to bring in a little more, I don't want to say structure, but yeah, a little, you know, a little more structure.
And Eric, I think that's a great idea, and I like to have structure in my podcasts. I mean, but you people out there are learning on the fly with us. Like, this is trial. I mean, I figure we would iron out segments as we go, but honestly, let that be our first one. I don't know what we'll title it, but I'm all in. And we're not going to be hammering these out so frequently that it won't give us enough time to actually delve in too. Like, we won't feel pressure. So I'm completely open to that. Did you have a game in mind for me?
Boy, I have a few. You know what? I haven't even played it yet, but there's this new game, and I might be able to get another code for it for you. There's a game called Moonbreaker, which is like a tactical RPG that was created by the people that did Subnautica.
Okay.
And it's in early access on Steam, but the world was created by Brandon Sanderson, the fantasy author.
I see it here.
So that one is on my radar right now. So that's an idea. And then there's others. We could.
Well, Moonbreaker for me. Let me think. I have
no idea if it's any good or what, but it's interesting pedigree involved in making it.
Have you played the Bloodstained games? Any of them?
Ritual of the Night I played like a few hours of.
Ritual.
Is that the newest one?
I'm actually playing that right now.
Okay.
But
I enjoyed it.
Have you played Curse of the Moon?
No. I think Curse of the Moon. Have I
That's
played that?
That's the 8-bit style.
Oh, no, I haven't. I remember, I think I might even have that game. It's like,
it's good.
When you ask me about video games, I probably have the game in my giant
100%.
backlog.
Yeah.
No, I haven't played it, but it totally. Oh yeah, that sounds fun. I loved the old Castlevania games. 1, 2, and 3 were like, I loved 3. I loved the first one. The first Castlevania is like one of my first games ever, and so that's definitely my style.
And the only reason that came to mind, one, because I'm playing Ritual of the Night, which is but I got the Curse of the Moon 2, a collector's edition from Limited Run Games recently. So I was like, that one. So Curse of the Moon for you, and mine will be Moonbreaker. And then we can powwow about them next time.
Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah, I'll play Moonbreaker also because I just got that. It just released into early access. So. Cool.
Right, there we go. And we'll come up with a name for this segment later.
And something really clever like Game Night Games.
Yeah, Game Night Games, the recommendation.
Game Talk.
So yeah, you've been to wrap up this what we're playing and what we're experiencing.
Oh, yeah.
Call of Duty is your stuff right now. And it's a complete blind spot for me. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just adding that to my shopping cart so that I don't forget to download
there
it. We go. Call of Duty, yeah. I don't know. I think I've been reviewing Call of Duty games for years, but with Modern Warfare 2019, I started to really get back into the franchise as like a regular player, and I would say that especially this year, with my friends and my kids, I've become a pretty hardcore Call of Duty player, actually, which I know that sounds kind of funny, but like, I think I'm pretty good at it now. Like, I've gotten a lot better. I play a lot. I used to play games like Counter-Strike Source, Team Fortress 2, some of those old school PC shooters. And I played those a lot with friends. And so now I'm kind of getting back into just competitive, semi-competitive shooter, first person shooters. And I like that. I like the competitiveness. I think a couple of years ago I decided I'm going to really get good at something, at some game, at one franchise. I'm going to get as good as I possibly can because I'm 40 years old and there's only, so much we can do with our, diminished capacity. As we get older, we are not, we don't have the same reflexes or eyesight or, response time as like some of these kids who are 15, 16, and you see them and you see how well they play these games sometimes when they're younger. And like my son is crazy good, even though he doesn't even play Call of Duty as much as me. But when he plays, I'm just like, wow, how did you do that? You're so quick. But I decided I wanted to get really good at it. So I've put a lot of time into that, especially this year when my girlfriend and I broke up because I suddenly have like a lot more evening time to myself, and so I'm
Yes.
on there with my friends a lot. But yeah, I played the Modern Warfare 2 beta, which was the last couple weekends, and I really enjoyed it. It's got some problems. It's got problems with the menus are kind of garbage. Visibility is kind of bad, but the game itself looks and plays really, really well. So that was fun. And that comes out at the end of this month. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. That's probably the only. Well, I've dabbled in some other games, but not enough to talk about any of them yet. So the next podcast, I'll have some other. Well, I'll have of the one we just talked about, and then some other ones to talk about.
For
But
sure.
this
Yeah,
was the big one I've been playing recently.
First person shooters for me are like you. Again, it's if I'm going to play a competitive game, I want to be good at it. It's not enough for me. Like I find these people,
Exactly.
I jumped into this. Like me jumping in and getting my ass kicked is not fun to me. Like
Right.
I'm competitive.
I mean, it's going to happen even if you're good at something
Oh,
sometimes, because there's
for
always
sure.
someone
But
better.
you're going to focus on
But
it.
at least you're competent, at least
Yeah.
you're decent enough to play. And if you get beat, you're like, well, that person was really good, or they're a cheater,
Like I
filthy
played,
cheaters.
yeah, and there's a lot of those too. Which is,
There
but
are.
like of all, I probably only have time if I'm going to play one multiplayer competitive game, and that's the one I focus on. And that
Mm-hmm.
used to be fighting games. I
Oh, really?
still wish it could be fighting games. It's just, man, I don't have the time. They're super complex, and they're
They
not
are.
like the genre has always had a pick up and play um problem, at least in the modern era with the way the games play. Like Street Fighter 2, you could pick up and play because it was
I
more
love Street
simplistic.
Fighter
There
2.
wasn't enough
Yep.
moves. Oh, I do too. I mean,
So one of my
it's a
favorite games of all
masterpiece
time. Yep.
design and all that good stuff. And the later fighting games are every bit as amazing too, but they are more
Absolutely.
intricate and they take more to understand and be good at, and they all have their own systems. And that's why for me, my favorite, I love Evo. I love fighting game tournaments. I will always love it. I've been into it before it was even Evo. And I even, I went to Evo in 2012
Nice.
and covered it a bit. I just, everything about that scene I love. I think they have this infinite ceiling, but it's hard for me to play them now. The
Yeah.
last competitive game I played was Overwatch and I loved it.
Oh, I loved
Um,
Overwatch for a while. And that's coming out actually. Overwatch 2. That
yeah.
would be something that we should definitely dabble in a little when that comes out. So we can talk about that. Because that comes
Well,
out.
if
Does that come out the 4th?
like,
Is it almost out?
isn't it like, isn't early access now?
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
The only reason I know this, Eric, is
Because it.
because my favorite character was Doomfist. And
Oh, I did not like Doomfist.
oh, you would have
But
hated me, man. You would have hated me.
I hated Doomfist actually. He
Everybody
pissed
did,
me
and
off.
that's why he gets no sympathy. Well, everyone is
Yeah.
lamenting the end of DPS Doomfist into Tank Doomfist, which is now basically just Lame Fist.
Yeah. Well, they changed
Yes.
that game so much in so many ways. It's
Yeah.
unrecognizable now, honestly.
Well, now he's a tank, right?
Yeah.
He's no
Well,
longer
they
a
changed that
DPS.
whole. There was they used to have 4 categories of
Yes, they did it. It was
right, and then
defender, support,
assault
tank,
and tank.
and then assault. But now then they got rid of the defender role and then just wrapped that all into
Well,
really just
depending,
they
they
separated it what it
yeah,
was. Yeah.
and I don't like that change. I don't like that change at all. I liked 4. I maybe I'm just a stickler, but I liked that there were certain characters that were set aside for defense,
Hmm.
and had specific abilities that were more defense-ish, Um, I haven't played Overwatch in a while now, so I
Me
definitely
either.
burned out on that game.
I would follow it. I did burn out a touch just because I didn't like some of the changes. I felt the balancing was extremely heavy handed
Yeah,
both ways. Like they would over
yeah,
buff, over nerf, rather than
uh-huh.
delicately touch it and go that way. But I digress. A lot of the stuff about Overwatch 2, I really wasn't jazzed about. I actually liked the change from 6 to 5.
I like
It
that a
was
lot.
hard. It's hard to get it's hard to get 5 people together, let alone
Yeah,
6, and this just makes it a bit easier. I think it's
yeah.
a
Like,
bit
should
of a
they make it
needless
4?
yeah, it's a
4 would be good.
needless sequel, but they're in it now, so you might as well embrace it.
Yeah,
um some of the changes and the free to play, which I understand, but the way they're handling some of this character stuff,
yeah,
um it
not
seems
great.
no, it seems frankly shit. And
Yeah,
some of the prices they're coming out with these skins too, like I guess they're going to be really expensive, and I'm just like,
at least they're not loot boxes, though.
I
I mean, that's
guess,
something. At least you know what you're paying for. I just think
yeah, I guess.
that's certainly better. Um,
I was
you know,
actually going to hold off, but since if you want to jump in, I'll play with you, and who knows, maybe I'll end up loving it again.
yeah, um,
Sometimes you got to go away to come back.
yeah, we could actually play that together at some point. Um,
Good.
yeah, I think they should have gone with 4-player teams and had gone back to 4 different categories of players, so they could have had 1 assault, 1 defense, 1 healer, and 1 tank per team, and 4v4.
Hmm.
That could have been pretty hardcore, actually. 5's better than 6, though. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't know what to think about the free to play. On the one hand, I like that it's free to play because I can just, I can play it with whoever. I don't have to like convince people to buy it, so I can, my friends can play it. That's nice. But it can make, free to play doesn't always result in the best quality matches.
No,
You
and
can get
me
more
personally,
cheaters
just
and
I understand the advantage from a free to play aspect from a development standpoint. I rather just pay one price and be done with it.
oh yeah,
Um,
totally.
but although it's still loose loot boxes were in the first one, but whatever. Um, Overwatch was a game that I absolutely loved. I loved the design. I
I
loved
did too.
playing it,
It made me think of Team
and
Fortress 2, which was one of my favorite games back in the
yeah,
day.
yeah.
And it was like a more polished, there was more variety in the different kinds of characters you played because it wasn't just classes, it was actual heroes. I'm not a huge I hated when Call of Duty went hero shooter. Like they for a few years they were like, they had like different characters you'd play and they had their different
Hmm.
powers and I fucking hated it.
It just didn't
But I
work for it, did it?
right, Call of Duty is not a hero shooter, but Overwatch is and I love it. It's not that I don't like hero shooters, I just want the games to be their own game. Like when I
Hmm.
play Call of Duty, I want everybody to basically have the same base level of stuff. But when I play Overwatch or something like that, it's fun to have different heroes and different, and Apex Legends is an interesting like kind of middle ground because that has the hero shooter elements in it.
Hmm.
But I don't love it. My brother loves that game and he plays it all the time and he's really good at it. And I just find myself dying like immediately in Apex Legends. It's I don't know. Do you ever play that?
Honestly, I never tried it.
No.
I like Titanfall 2 so much, and
Oh,
then
I
they did
love
this,
Titanfall
and
too.
I was just like, I don't need.
Yeah.
And again, like, there's just so many games like that. I'm not the biggest first person shooter guy anyway, from a competitive standpoint. So it really has to be something that grabs me for me to even jump in and try it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that's where
Titanfall 2. Boy, that I want to replay that campaign. I thought it was great and the
so good,
multiplayer is really
man.
fun and yeah, that's one of the few games I've given it perfect 10 to because I just thought it was such a polished experience across single and multiplayer. A really good story and like just I was never like a high level player, but do you remember watching some of those high level
I
multiplayer
do.
players like fly through the maps?
It's incredible. Like it's
Incredible.
like it's like for me to watch competitive first person shooter games. like Counter-Strike, I find immensely
Mm.
boring. But
Yeah,
I
yeah, I can see that.
I recognize the skill. It's just boring
Uh-huh.
to me. It doesn't have enough of the element. Like Titanfall introduces traversal in this stuff, and I'm just like, I'm blown away watching it. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's insane. Have
Yeah.
seen people like basically flying through the level, turning around in midair and shooting someone from that's behind them. And it's just like, what magic is this? You know, sometimes watching back in the day when I'd watch Fortnite a little bit, because I was playing Fortnite for a while. I don't really play it much anymore. Um, but watching some of those crazy builders build and like edit through a wall and kill, that's just that's like watching another game. It's like watching someone
Mhm.
play a game that I have never played. Even though I've played a bunch of Fortnite, watching them play it that way, it's like, what are they doing? I don't understand this sorcery that they're applying to this game. Same thing with Titanfall 2, just that movement. Like, holy crap! Once people got good at it, it was just out of this world, and that is kind of fun. But yeah, I am kind of sad that Respawn went the Apex Legends route. I mean, it's a quality game, and I think they do a good job with it. But it's like, well, I hope we still get Titanfall 3. I hope we still can
Yeah,
focus on some. I liked their Star Wars game quite a lot. Did you play that Jedi Fallen Order?
I did. I
I
did.
thought they I thought they did a great
I
job
didn't
with
love it
that.
as much. I didn't love it as much as most, I will
Yeah,
say, but I liked it.
yeah,
I had some issues with it, but nothing that can't be fixed in this upcoming sequel. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah. I definitely had issues, but I
some of
was
the stuff with the
impressed that
combat,
they.
I actually thought the combat was a touch too plotting for me.
Mm,
I have an issue with a lot of games taking, they're like, oh, we'll do souls based combat because
that's what it
that's what
was.
everyone likes. And
Yeah,
I'm like, he's a fucking Jedi. Like, I get
right,
he's only a Padawan, he's not fully trained. He's still a fucking Jedi. Like, aren't they supposed to be a bit faster? Like, even him,
right.
the way he ran like so, like, boom, boom, boom. I'm
Well,
just
you
like,
can make Souls combat faster. I mean, we've seen
yeah,
that
you
in
can.
even in the Souls games, like where there's where something like Sekiro is a lot faster than or Bloodborne even is much faster than a Dark Souls.
Hmm.
Um, and you've got stuff coming up like Wolong Dynasty, which looks like it's going to ramp the speed up a little bit, and the Souls combat. That's not a Souls game, but Souls like. So yeah, they could have easily made a Jedi game that ramped the speed up and that made it a little bit more big and like and flashy, like Jedi combat, but still kept the basic like lock on, strong attack, weak attack. That Souls like combat could be there, but just sped up and also like just make those stormtroopers a lot easier. Make them just
Yeah, see, that's
cut
the
right through
thing,
them
and
like butter.
I get like they wanted to make each enemy more impactful. But
Yeah,
listen, again, you're a Jedi. Some of this shit you're supposed to just carve through, and
right.
like, why are they deflecting all my attacks with like these pedestrian weapons? Yeah, things like that actually bother me. But in terms of the grandiose nature of the world and these planets you could visit, I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was well done. But
Make your own
give me a quicker,
lightsaber.
yeah, give me a quicker Cal. What's his name? Cal
Cal Kestis.
Kestis. That's right. Give me a
Yep.
quicker Cal. Um, Give me a little
You know,
bit
people.
more. Like, the story was good, but sometimes it got a little loose. Like, there
Mm-hmm,
wasn't enough there. But I liked it enough. I'll play the sequel
mm-hmm.
for sure. For sure.
For going from like being a first person shooter developer to making that game, I thought, damn,
Excellent. That's
good
hard.
job. Like kudos, guys. I was not expecting this. And also in a market where Star Wars games are just, I don't want to say non-existent, but in terms of like where you would expect it to be, there just aren't that many Star Wars games. We've got an MMO, we've got the fucking stupid Battlefront games, which
You know,
just do not like at all.
squadrons.
They play like a worse Battlefield, so that's not good.
No.
And it's just not there's not a lot of modern Star Wars games, and a lot of them have been canceled. So to me, that was just like cool. We've got an actual Star Wars game that's not a first person shooter. That's not an MMO. We've got an action adventure game, and that's
And
Star Wars action
for
adventure.
all those shitty Star Wars games and the, you know, the no Titan, or the treatment of Titanfall 2, I should say, we'll just have to
Yeah.
say thanks,
Oh god,
EA. You know,
dude. that was an atrocity, honestly. The release date for that game was about as cruel as a thing you can do to a developer as I can imagine. Because
It was abhorrent, and it's like this is why I take issue with the fact that like sometimes when you're a person, you're critiquing, you're throwing stones at the throne of these companies. They're like, oh, you think you know better? Honestly,
sometimes.
sometimes, yeah.
Hmm.
Like, who makes that decision?
Well, yeah, that's such a silly response to criticism too. Like I get that all the time. Oh, you think you could do better? Why don't you go make a Lord of the Rings show? Okay, why don't you give me $1 billion and let's
Yeah,
see
and
what
then I will.
happens?
Yeah.
Like I don't have that, and also I'm a fucking critic. Critics don't make these things. Just like the people making them aren't out writing the criticism, right? Like these are two
Hmm.
separate roles. But
Yeah.
sure, give me $1 billion. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, like yeah, I don't know. Anyways, what I know that one game you wanted to talk about tonight, before we call it, is God of War Ragnarok, which comes
Yeah, I had
out
another
when?
thing we were going to get into, but
Oh
we're going
yeah,
to we'll try to run these about 90 minutes, I think. Not
okay,
saying we're going to like, that's like our
yeah,
hard thing, but like as a framework,
yeah.
we'll become a much more well-oiled machine as we progress here. But I do want to talk about, each show I'd like to have some sort of like big topic we tackle, or one or two that we bring to the table and can discuss. And I mean, one of the hypothetical names for this podcast was the critical enthusiast, where my idea was we can each take this position on an issue, and it can grow, or sometimes we find ourselves on opposite ends of it, and we can have a conversation of it. But one thing, I mean, God of War Ragnarok is coming out, and
Hmm.
that's probably the big tentpole game for the last quarter here of 2022, other than Callisto Protocol, which is still big. But I would say God of War Ragnarok, which is definitely the bigger game. It's a sequel
Oh yeah,
to almost a consensus game of the year in 2018. Um, Before we get started on my thoughts, though, Eric, like what, I know you're a fan of God of War. Did you like 2018's?
I did. I really enjoyed the two things. Well, I enjoyed several things about it. I enjoyed. Well, I really liked the changes to combat. As much as like I've enjoyed the franchise in the past, and I've been playing them since the first God of War. I never really loved the camera angle in those games. The sort of, each scene you'd enter, it would be a fixed camera from usually up above, and you'd go through a new doorway, and then it would be a different camera angle, and this one's more of an over the shoulder. And I know that sort of in a way there's a valid criticism of Sony saying like, well, all their games are now basically the same type of game, a third person action over the shoulder game. You could say that about Uncharted, Last of Us,
Horizon.
Yeah, lots. And I get that, and I understand that, but I still enjoyed the combat in this game more overall, and that's just a personal thing. I'm not saying it was better. I just personally enjoyed it, but I also really liked how they made it a character-driven story, and I liked the father-son relationship, and I thought the voice actors did a phenomenal job with those characters, and it was often very funny in a way, and it was just a cool world. I don't know. I think like the word Ragnarok has been overdone in titles for Viking games and movies and so forth, but I like that Viking, that Norse world that they created for the game moving away. Although I think they could have just stayed in a Greek, Middle Eastern sort of Mediterranean setting and still rebooted the same way, and that would have been good too. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's been years since I've played it now. I actually dabbled. I got back into the PC version when that came out and just played a little, just to see how it worked on PC, and I thought it played pretty well. I'm curious to see how the new one will improve graphically, because honestly, that game looked great, but it has I see it aging already, just in terms of sort of like loading that up on my PC. I was like, this doesn't look as good as I remember it. But,
really, that's interesting. Maybe I'll give that a shot, because I still remember it as this gorgeous game, and I do want to boot it up.
But I feel like it looks a little more washed out than I remember it or something. I don't know.
All right.
Now we're in the PS5 era. and games look better. They just look better all the time. It's subtle. It's more subtle than it used to be, right? You used to have much more bigger generational leaps in graphical fidelity and whatnot. But I am looking forward. This one comes out in November, and I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I hope they don't change too much with combat and stuff, but I am looking forward to continuing the story and to seeing how. I'm sure it's going to be freaking gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, curious decision. I mean, the first one it's cross-gen. I mean, I don't think it's going to sacrifice or suffer too much by doing it, but it was a little disappointing. But I am, like you, I'm a massive God of War fan. I loved the series. I wrote a piece like a while ago when it became fashionable to shit on Kratos as a character. Like everyone was like, he's a terrible character, and one guy said it, and then everyone was
20
chanting.
People wrote it.
Yeah, like usual in games media, everyone's chanting this mantra. Mine was, I just titled it, "Does liking Kratos matter?" Because everything they got on him about, oh, he's just one note and he's this. I'm like, okay, do we hate Mario because he didn't change? Do we hate Dante from Devil May Cry because he's just a generic cool guy, wisecracking, corny, and he never changed? And when they actually did try to change him in DMC, which I actually liked, everyone hated it. Everyone hated it.
I didn't love some of the aesthetic changes, but I really thought that was a fun game, actually.
Yeah. So my only point is, listen, I don't think it's like this monumental achievement in character, but I thought Kratos was always a perfect conduit for exactly what the game was trying to do, an outlet for rage and revenge. And why is that a problem?
It's a god of fucking war.
It's a god of fucking war. Like, whatever. Saying that, to me, 2018's God of War worked so much with the evolutions of the character because what we were given before.
Right.
I don't think that would have worked quite as much. I wouldn't have bought this Kratos without the context that pure rage-obsessed monster that actually the game tells a good tale. Like, by the end, he's just destroying the world around him in his quest to do what he is doing. Like, he literally destroys Greece by killing Hades, by killing Poseidon. The ocean's overrun and pestilence becomes in all the area, and that was my issue. So we get to 2018's God of War, and like you, I think the original trilogy's combat was never its strength. It was the worlds and the violence and the bosses
fun.
And the scale and it was fun, for sure. And they tried to refine it as it went on. By God of War 3, it was good. Ascension introduced something that was not really necessary, but it was still enjoyable. But we were ready for a change for 2018, and we got it, and I liked it. But I think there's things that are around this sequel of Ragnarok that I don't see anyone talking about. And one of the first is I actually think 2018's, it's a surface level problem that I have, but it needs to be rectified, is it had a problem. It didn't have really good bosses, and God of War, that matters. Like you say, oh, it's a story. No, God of War, you can't just suddenly shed all the stuff that everyone loved about the game. You can still tell this tale, but you got to have these epic, awesome bosses. Now, the intro was great with Baldur. The final boss was great.
Yeah.
But everything in between, we're fighting these trolls that were boring and
repetitive.
Even that dragon boss fight was kind of just not awesome. So, I mean, that's
I don't think there's any awesome dragon boss fights in video games, actually.
Even in Souls games?
I just think they're some of the weakest bosses.
Yeah.
Design-wise,
they look cool.
Power-wise, they look cool, but the actual fight itself is never as fun, I think, personally. I don't know. That's another story for another time.
Yeah. So,
bosses. That's an interesting observation, yeah.
I mean, we're going to get them. Yeah. But this is going to lead into my big conversation piece and issue that I think no one's talking to. We now know that Ragnarok is going to be the culmination of the Norse saga and the mythology. They're not going to do a trilogy. It's 2 games.
Okay. Duology.
I don't think one game can do justice to everything that they need to do narratively.
Okay.
Because the first game, as a product, is what it was. But it's basically like what the first 6 episodes of House of the Dragons is. It's a setup.
Mm-hmm.
It's an introduction to the world. We haven't met the major players in this mythology. I mean, the only thing we got to see was Thor's hand in a cutscene that most people probably missed. Okay, we haven't met Thor, we haven't met Odin, we haven't seen Surtur, we haven't seen Fenrir. All these things, so we need to be introduced to them.
Right.
Then we need to lead into this ultimate battle that is Ragnarok. Okay, you know, I remember talking to some people. You know, Kratos and Atreus are their own story. You know, they can just. I'm like,
that's
the
true.
game is fucking called Ragnarok. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's called. You're gonna have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to get into this battle and I'm not saying even if they don't even cover all the crazy angles of it, even the major parts of it have to be tackled. Then we got to deal with all the repercussions of that battle in the world, let alone everything that's going to happen with Kratos and Atreus. Even if this game is twice the size of 2018's God of War, I still don't see how they're going to do it.
What now it's the resolution of the Norse saga, but are they planning to continue his story in another setting? Or do we know?
Well, even if they are, we don't know. I mean, a lot of rumors about Kratos possibly dying in this one or whatever happens. I mean, they set up. I mean, even the original God of War in the outtakes, like David Jaffe always intended for the mythologies to jump. Like that's what the original plan was. They just seemed to stick with Greece for all that time. And then when we go into Tyr's temple in 2018's God of War, we see all this symbolism and all the mythologies. You just have to guess that they're out there. I just know in terms of this mythology in and of itself, I don't know how one game is going to do it. I really don't. Like, and you know what? We're going to talk about spoilers now. So if you haven't played it, then whatever, like 1, 2, 3, spoiler time now. Atreus is Loki. We have to deal with all of that stuff. Like, there's so many things that have to just lead into this battle of Ragnarok, let alone have it play out. Then we got to, you know, what's going to happen afterwards. I don't know, Eric. What do you think?
I haven't honestly given it much thought. Not like you've given it a lot of thought. This is you're going to have to lead the charge on this one. You know, it's a hard question just in broad terms, because for one thing, I don't want the game to be super long. I would rather have 2 more games that are shorter than one really long one. You know what I mean?
I agree with you.
Just in terms of like, well, partly that's just me, my bias. I like shorter games because I get bored or I run out of time. But also I think that usually you can tell a better story in a shorter game than you do in a long game. Because you have more, because you should have some restraint in your storytelling, right? You shouldn't have to tackle too many things. Like what you're saying right now is absolutely true. They have to tackle a lot of stuff, right? Well, it's easy to get bloated and to get lost in that. And as a gamer, on the other side of things, it's easy to just stop caring after a while if it takes too long to get through the story, or if it's just too much, you know. I don't want the game to be twice as long as the first or as the 2018 God of War. You know, I'd much prefer to have them tell one aspect of this story and then save the rest for the third. You know,
and I agree, and I'm with you. But my point, they've said that this is the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
this
yeah,
is
I guess.
The ending.
I guess unless they can do some of that story in a new setting, and they can actually do some of the
repercussion aspect.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The fallout, the resolution stuff later on in, you know, I don't know what setting that would be.
Egypt or Celtic or whatever they're going to do. Yeah. I mean, the options are endless. Like you, I'm in a complete agreement. I would have preferred it to be a trilogy. I know that would have seemed arbitrary to some people because the Greek one was, but you look at, you know, you were able to tell the tale and it worked. Like God of War 1, our battle was with Ares, the god of war. He killed our family and sort of we made a deal with him that wasn't all it was bargained up to be. And after that, it's our job to kill him and take him out. And from there,
Mm-hmm.
that leads right into the pantheon of the Greek gods, right? But then the Titans come into play and they have their own thing. And by the end of that game, we're on the assault to Mount Olympus with the
Mm-hmm.
Titans. And it just sort of all played together, right? Now, can you imagine trying to cram God of War 2 and 3 story together? That would have been hard.
Right.
I
Although
mean,
they would have probably done it a little differently if that was the
Yeah.
plan from the beginning. At least,
Mhm.
at least. So what I will say is that at least this is the plan from the beginning, rather than them trying, making the second game and then like halfway through it, they're like, oh, actually, you're not going to get a third game. So
yeah,
due
to budget, whatever.
like
Now,
change
one
this
way-
all up.
The one way I do hypothesize them doing it is they introduced the concept of time travel or timelines, which I absolutely kind of just hate, but it's already in there with the, one of the Mimir conversations. He talks about how the battle, or some of the illusion with the battle between Jormungandr and Thor caused time to reverse, or like he smashes Jormungandr back in time, and they add that like possibility, right? And we know that Jormungandr talking to Atreus seemed like, Mimir even says, it's like, he seems like he knows you, brother. He says something like that, right? So
Yeah.
that, as that's entered into this world in some aspect. I'm like, I could see them possibly doing this. I hope they don't, because I don't like timeline and time travel stuff. I think
that's
it's
tough.
a crutch in storytelling that always asks far too many questions that can ever be answered. And to me, it actually kind of seems lazy, because it's like, oh, well, you know what? We're just going to try and travel. And now we're going to time travel. And
Yeah.
this will get retconned and whatever.
Totally.
But I trust Sony Santa Monica. I love their games. I do love what they did with 2018's game. Saying that, I do think, like, I still preferred God of War 3. I actually think God of War 3, it embodies more of what I loved about those franchises. So I think we needed that quiet before the storm. I'm hoping Ragnarok embraces that Kratos, but it like amalgamates into the new one. He and from a character portrayal, that's how it works. But I really struggle with how they are going to fit all this into one game. Even at a game like, let's say 2018 is 25 to 30 hours. Is that fair?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
25 hours,
Yeah.
let's just say. People play differently. I'm generally
Depending on
longer.
how you play, yeah.
So let's say even if this game is like 40 hours, it's going to be hard, man.
Yeah. It's
going to be hard.
It's interesting, like, you comparing I've almost, in a way, I look at the rebooted series almost like a different franchise. It is so fundamentally different than the original games. You know what I mean? Like, it plays so differently. Like, it's such a different approach to this story. But I mean, yeah, I don't know.
That character, they've chose to bring him forward. Like, they allude to it all the time. Some of the most powerful moments in 2018's is the revelation of Atreus finding out who Kratos was.
Right. Yeah.
And we still don't even really know how Atreus is Kratos' son.
Right. Yeah.
Like, is he actually the biological father? We don't know.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of narrative aspects and questions that, again, like, that game is entirely a setup piece, entirely introductions. And there's realms of this world of the Norse mythology that we haven't visited. Like, we have to go to Asgard. I mean, really, we haven't even seen a lot of Midgard. We just were on a lake with a couple areas, right? So
there's a lot of ground to cover. I think you're right. I think that is a little worrisome. It will be. I mean, we'll know soon enough, I guess, right? It's just over a month away.
It's crazy.
Which is crazy for sure. Now I sort of feel like I need to replay the game again. Although, I mean, do I have the time to do that? Like, but really, like, I kind of need a refresher, I feel like. So I might have to do that. That might have to join our list of games we're playing for this podcast, because in just a couple episodes, we'll have that one available.
Yeah.
And
that is a game, although I generally don't play games day one. I think I'm going to have to. As long as
Yeah.
it's stable and
You
running.
know,
If it
I
runs,
would love to get that a review copy of that game so I could review it, but Sony blacklisted us, so we can't. We don't
now,
get
why
any
would they go
review.
and do something like that?
I honestly don't know. They've never told us. It's so bizarre.
Wow.
It was right before the release of The Last of Us Part 2 that they went completely dark, and we never got an explanation. We never heard back from Sony. We ended up just, we ended up giving Ghost of Tsushima
So,
the Game of the Year award that year that we got blacklisted. But we had to buy our own copies. We we didn't get any pre-release. It's so strange
so
because of course for
you and
years we've
your
been.
colleague at Forbes, you're both not.
Yeah. No, and again, I don't know what the reasoning was. I assume it's probably my fault because I'm usually the one getting in trouble.
I
But
agree.
but honestly, Paul Tassi, who's there, he got in trouble with Sony for one of his articles that he wrote about the PlayStation and terrorism or something. So maybe it was his fault. I don't know. They never told
Yeah.
us. It's frustrating because I like, as a reviewer, it's nice to have access to a game ahead of release just so that you can get a start on it. These games are
Hmm.
so long.
Hmm.
I think I wrote my Last of Us Part 2 review like 4 months after it came out.
Yeah, I remember we discussed that in our last conversation.
Yeah.
I love that you did that.
I mean, I think honestly, and that this is kind of what I've learned throughout this experience is like, I'm not going to write timely game reviews. It's never going to happen anymore. I, I know that there's a place and time for that, but there's a couple hundred other reviewers out there that'll give you a Metacritic score.
Yep.
So I don't really feel the need to be part of that group. I will, and I'm going to try to do that more and more with stuff like I review Call of Duty every year, but I have decided for this year I'm going to wait longer to post my review because what I always find is that enough changes with some games, especially live service games like a competitive online shooter, so enough changes in a month or two that's when you really should be
Hmm.
digging into it, and you need that experience with it. So, but anyways, I'm getting off track. God of War, if God of War Ragnarok is 40 hours long, that's going to take me a little while to get through. Even
Same.
starting on day one, it's going to take a little while, and that's okay. I think I really think there's a problem in this industry of people playing a game, a 40 or 50 or 60-hour game over the course of 2 or 3 days. Like, how can you possibly really get the right experience? Like, that's way too much time spent playing that game in a short. It's gonna affect your opinion of the game.
Well,
That's not how people play.
I'll tag our last conversation from the previous conversation we had here because I think we really went into good detail about that. But I'm in complete
Yeah.
agreement, and I don't think you're doing justice on the review at all by doing that.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
Well, that's why I like reviewing TV shows, because you can review 1 hour at a time. And I
yeah.
used to try to write multi-part video game reviews, but honestly, I just don't think it works. I don't know why. Maybe I should revisit that. But yeah, I just didn't find it resonated with people to write multi-part reviews. But
Mhm.
with a game like God of War, which is so story driven, or these other games, like, it can make sense to talk about it in smaller chunks, I think.
I
I
agree.
don't know. Yeah.
How do you feel about like the hype cycle, more or less, for it? Like, the
Oh.
reason I say that, because you look at 2018, back then we had E3, we had the big
Mhm.
reveal with Bear McCreary and that whole spectacle. And I actually feel like Sony on the whole, but maybe all the companies, they're suffering from a little bit of lack of build up for the games. Now, this is a game that really doesn't need a lot of introduction,
Right.
but it just seems until that most recent trailer we got, we really didn't have like anything to go on. We had one trailer that was really lackluster, that
Mhm.
seemed more like of a snippets of a vertical slice more than like a all encompassing trailer that would give
Mhm.
you a good feel of the game. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and that last trailer gave us
Hmm.
that spectacle. But I'm just like, are they going to have a state of play or whatever the hell they do now? To me, if I was Sony, I would be having a state of play for this game.
Sure.
But again, I guess narratively they don't want to dare leak anything. But I guess there's ways around that too. Even if it's a 10, like they're not shy about putting 15-minute presentations on.
Right. This is
So
a tough question because I think a lot of things are over marketed. And we
Oh,
like
100%.
sometimes you
Yeah.
get oversaturated with just like, I know this is the 12th trailer for the new Assassin's Creed game. Like I basically have played the whole game now,
Mhm.
just watching these trailers, or like I've criticized From Software for oversaturating, like releasing like this is the, the story trailer and this is the this trailer and this is
Mhm.
the pre-order trailer. And it's like, you guys, you don't have to show us this much. We're excited for your game. Which especially is true of Dark Souls type games. Those always have such virality already built in. And what I would like to see from Sony, and this is just personal taste, I think, is not necessarily like a 15-minute gameplay video, but like a really, really good trailer, like a really good, like
Mhm.
just something to really get us excited about what's coming. It doesn't have to be a lot of marketing, but they could just do something, tease it. There's going to be something released on X day and there's a countdown or whatever. Get people talking about it.
Mhm.
Release some images on Twitter and Facebook, and then drop a really awesome trailer that everyone's just like, oh shit, we got to play this game now. I think there's this balance. You don't want to oversaturate, you don't want to overmarket, but you do need to do some fucking marketing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have seen very little about this game at all. And I feel like now is the time. Like we're a month out. Drop something
I'm
really,
glad we're on
really
the same
exciting.
page for
Yeah.
this because I actually really feel this. Like I understand E3 is no longer there. We don't have the conduit
Mm-hmm.
anymore. That and like these
But we have
companies
the
just say
internet.
whatever they want. Yeah, like we do, but it just doesn't seem how it doesn't have that same spectacle, or at least we could have that level of spectacle in an individual way for each of these companies, but they've yet to like find the way
Mm-hmm.
to do it. And I guess I like the hype. Like I used to
I
love
do
those
too. It's
monstrous
fun.
E3 trailers. I know some people get really jaded. Oh, I like these bite-sized show. They don't do it for me. They're impersonal. They're corporate. They're you know hand. They're keeping me at an arm's length, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel. I'm not in. You're not getting that gameplay demo or something like that. Like think how effective that 2018 presentation at
Mm-hmm.
E3 was with the orchestral set the scene, yes, but the
Mm-hmm.
reintroduction of Kratos, this really it was not much there, but it was showing us this different way the game was played and everyone was just in awe of it, and the way it
Yeah.
ended was actually incredibly powerful, and now you knew where you were, and it's like that's
Mm-hmm.
how you do a trailer, that's how you do hype,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you build it, and then go from there. Like they're missing the boat with Ragnarok, I really feel, and it's like you have so much to go on. Like now you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with what everyone actually knows and loves about Norse mythology, and
Yeah.
you're not really diving into it. I get you don't want to show a lot. I get that. But I don't know. You only have so much time, like you said.
Yeah. No, and we're at that point now. It's this is when they should be turning that flood on. Like, give us some trailer, give us a trailer, give us some, maybe, and I don't know, since I'm blacklisted, maybe there will be like a big uh, review event, or not review, like a preview event where people get to try it out, and like journalists are going to all publish, you know, 36 articles all in the same
Well,
day
Game
about
Informer
it.
did have their cover story recently where they
Yeah.
broke down some new stuff, and but even that, like they're talking about the combat and this and that. I'm like, and then they had
Mm-hmm.
some combat breakdowns. I'm like, okay, but it wasn't. I guess that was their way of trying to build it, I suppose. But even then, I didn't really, I didn't feel the hype in my loins. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting because I definitely don't feel like I've been like, I'm not seeing much about it. I'm not hearing much about it. I'm not, it's great. It's a month out, but I'm just like, oh, right, that game's coming out soon.
That's right.
you,
Yeah,
you know, whereas like the lead up to Elden Ring or something was like
monumental.
major anticipation. You could feel
Yeah,
it crackling in the internet, like everybody was so ready for that. Right now with God of War Ragnarok, it's like, well, I guess that's coming out in, well, let me check. Oh yeah, November. you know?
and we felt that Elden Ring level of hype for the 2018
Yeah,
game, but
totally.
it's not here. And this is a
Yeah.
sequel to that game, this Game of the Year perennial winner,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just not there. But I mean, that's something for them to deal with, I
Yep.
suppose. I just
And it might be a little more widespread than just God of War too. I think like entering this holiday season, I'm having a hard time just feeling like there's anything really exciting coming out, like, or just not that I don't know about these things that I'm excited for, but just that I don't get this feeling like everybody's really jazzed for this season, you know?
No, it's
Like,
more
yeah,
like
we
because everything is 2023. It's like this game's
right.
2023. This game don't
Hmm.
like I'm super excited for Crisis Core coming in December and Tactics Ogre coming up and
Yeah.
uh, games like that, which I mean to me they're incredibly important, but they definitely aren't capturing the gaming industry's widespread attention like some of
Hmm.
these tentpole games should. There's only a few of those, but yeah, like I don't know. And I think that we were going to talk about it today, but we'll leave it for next episode. We'll talk about what we're excited for the rest of
Yeah.
2022
Oh yeah.
and maybe some stuff on the horizon.
That
But
sounds good. Yeah.
that's yeah, the God of War Ragnarok conversation. I trust Santa Monica. Um, they've earned that right, but I've really spent a lot of time and I'm just like I don't know how they will fit and do justice to all this stuff. But I'm excited to play it and
Yeah.
find out.
And they may, like economical storytelling is a real thing. Like being able to get to the point without wasting everyone's time. Maybe it'll be better for it.
Maybe.
Just to be the eternal optimist, maybe limiting the amount of time they have to tell this story will actually make them tell a better one. It's always possible.
And another thing I forgot, they have to deal with the Freya as well.
Yeah, I
Like
don't.
that's another narrative thread that is there. So anyway, yeah. Um yeah, let's sign off here. I mean,
Yeah, I
we will
probably have to
definitely be
go
more
parent and stuff.
structured as we go.
Yeah,
We'll pin down some
we'll find our
segments
feet.
here, but how do we end this now? Do
We
we
just tell everyone to fuck off. Go away.
Yeah,
Everybody.
fuck.
Fuck you guys.
By the way, we swear in this podcast. We'll always
Once in a
swear.
while.
That's great.
Not as much as some podcasts, I'm sure, but
Depends on the topic, I suppose.
depends on the topic. Yeah. Now this was fun. I'm looking forward to making as we find the flow and play some games and talk
The
about
groove,
stuff.
the
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah. And play some older
Make
games too.
podcast love.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Eric, I don't know. What do you want to tell these people?
Be excellent to each other.
Be excellent to each other.
Party on.
All right. Yeah, this is game night with Eric Kane and Jason Rose. Thank you very much for tuning in for our inaugural episode. We'll have more for you, so stay tuned. Thank you very much. Peace, everybody.
Thank you. Peace.